Hey everybody, this is Nathan Simmons, and on to today's video, I'm going to be discussing how to record when you're doing a physical drop or recording an email, or even doing a qualifying or verifying call in your uh, Agent Assist app on the web version. So let me share my screen. Hopefully, you guys can see this now. And so on the web version, it's actually very simple for you to kind of log your activity. And so I'm going to be covering really kind of the first step of our sales process, and that is when we are trying to verify or qualify a lead. And what that means is we're going to call that lead that very first time, and we're going to we're really trying to verify three different things. We're going to, whether we do it in person by dropping into the business physically and asking them the three questions, or we do it by way of a phone call, we're going to attempt to ask that business, is this the correct address? And obviously, if we're walking into a business, we should know it's the correct address. But if we're doing it by phone, that would be the first question. And then we're going to ask, who is the person who makes the final decisions for the company? And get that verified based on what Agent Assist tells us who the decision makers should be for that company. And then lastly, we're going to verify how many employees that the company has by asking them how many that they do have at the moment. So let's say that you're doing this, physically. All right, and you're dropping into this business, and so I'll give an example here, just how to log this information. And so now, if you're actually out and about doing physical drops, it's actually much simpler to record your activity on the mobile device through the Agent Assist app on your phone. And so I would recommend that. But let's say you're going to do this at the end of the day and you're just wanting to record your activity after you've done so. So I've got a few leads here. And so let's say, I want to log my activity on the web version that I did a drop with Heatcraft Incorporated. It's very simple to do so. So you click on the business and it's going to give you different things to really choose what I want to do. So I'm going to scroll down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an activity. I'm basically going to put the activity that I completed. And so if I dropped in on this business, I'm going to say that I completed a drop. And so let's say I did it on today at 12:05. Maybe I just did it. All right, and then I'm going to put the result of that drop. So most likely, let's say I dropped in, and I spoke to a non-decision maker, and let's say everything went well. Everything went a-okay. I dropped in and everything was fine. So I can hit spoke to non-decision maker. I can put who I spoke with if I would like to. Most likely, David Moon is actually the name of the decision maker you see here. I can put other. It might have been Sarah, who is the gatekeeper, and I can put any notes in here as well. And so it's really that simple. Now, you'll notice there's a box here that says add a next activity. Well, our next activity is going to be to do an appointment call with this client. However, I recommend only putting you're going to add a next activity if you need to be reminded of something in the calendar. So most likely we know, all right, this is a legitimate business. We've verified everything. I'm not going to add a next activity because I probably won't have a specific day and time that I'm going to call them back to try to set an appointment. So I wouldn't say we worry about that now. So if I hit save, now that activity has been logged, and you can see the status of the lead has now been changed to qualified. So if I go back to my leads, that lead is actually going to no longer be there because I have this filtered to only show me leads that are considered new. And so if I change my filter to show you qualified leads and I apply that, you should see there is my Heatcraft Incorporated. That is now no longer a new lead, it is now a qualified lead because I have thus qualified it. So a couple other things that I want to mention, and this goes the same for if you're doing a drop or you're doing a phone call. So let's take Samtex Corporation, and I did a drop on this one. I want to add an activity. All right. I can also put, no answer. I left the card, because maybe nobody was in, maybe the business was closed, or just, nobody was up at the front. Okay, that's very rare when you're doing a physical drop, but let's say that's the case. So if I didn't speak to anybody, then I obviously didn't verify anything. Okay, so I could put any notes in there that I want to. I could even add a next activity again if I wanted to add something that I wanted to put in the calendar. You could certainly do that. I'm going to hit save. And if you notice, because I didn't mark that I spoke to somebody and actually verified it, the status of this lead is still considered new. So that's pretty much how you do a drop, and it's going to be very similar if you're notating that you sent an email. So let's say Samtex Corporation, I could do the exact same thing. I want to notate that I actually sent an email to this client. So I can, certainly just put what, the day and time that I sent the email, who I sent it to. I could say I sent it to the decision maker. And I could even mark that this email was received should I want to do so and put any notes in here. So, when you're logging activity, this is really for you to kind of just have an idea of exactly what activity you've completed. So when you're going in and you're looking at some of the things, you can see how many times that you've actually reached out to a client. So, because if I view activity history here, you can actually see that there's been some things that have been done on this activity. So, and if you noticed here, it is still considered a new lead because sending an email does not verify that lead. So, last thing that I'll show you, which is probably going to be more useful than anything, is you are, when you're making phone calls with folks and you're actually verifying companies. So, let's say I'm just doing some qualifying calls. All right, I'm sitting in my office and I'm trying to verify some leads so I have a good clientele to call at the end of the week to try to set appointments with them at the end of my week. So let's say I'm just going to start calling, and there's really no filter here as far as kind of how this sorts. That is one negative about the web version. I would say you have much more filtering options when you're using your mobile device. So keep that in mind. So let's say I'm going to call Dodson Electric, and it shows that the CEO is Drew Dodson. This is their address and got their phone number here. It also says that they've got 10 employees at this location, also 10 globally. So this is probably their only location since there's 10 at this here location. So if you're calling from a Wi-Fi signal, say if you're calling from Google Voice, you can actually click on this phone number and you can make a call directly. You notice the little dialog box that just pops up, but real simple. Okay, so you've got your phone out, or whatever phone that you're using, simply dial the phone number, and after the phone call is over with, because you're sitting here looking at the information, after the phone call is over with, you're going to put the result of the call. So, and you can even do this as you're calling, as you're making this phone call. Now you obviously would have to kind of remember some of this information, but I can even hit add an activity. All right, and the activity I want to add is, hey, I just made a phone call. All right, and so let's say I make a drop call and everything went smooth. If I scroll back up, Drew is the decision maker. All right, I confirmed that. They actually have 10 employees, and they've got, this is their correct address. Everything is accurate. So I can hit spoke to non-decision maker because that's most likely who I spoke to. I spoke to somebody other than Drew. And again, I can put who I spoke with if I want to, but I don't necessarily have to. And I don't have anything I need to put in the calendar because I know I'm going to call them back to set an appointment, but I don't really have a specific day and time that I'm going to do so. So I just hit save. It's that simple. Okay. And looking at the status, I've got a qualified status because now I've verified that lead. I'm going to go back to my leads, and that lead obviously has disappeared because now, again, remember, my filter is only showing me leads that are new that I have not verified yet. So a couple more examples I'll show is, all right, so now I'm ready to make my next call. I'll scroll down, and let's say that I made a phone call and nobody answered. Okay, kind of the same thing. All right, it's going to keep its exact same status. So I make a phone call, all right, and nobody answered, or I left a message, or a wrong number. Okay, if I hit save, it's going to save this information and going to keep it as a new lead because obviously I can't verify anything unless I spoke to somebody. Now, there's one thing that I want to make sure that we all understand here is if you're just doing some qualifying calls, all right, there are going to be times potentially that you might get hung up on whenever you're doing so. So technically, if I'm going to put the result of that phone call, I could put that I spoke to a non-decision maker, or even possibly, I was actually speaking to the decision maker. Well, in one of those instances, if you select either one of these top two options, But something that you need to know is that if you click one of these two options and you hit save, it is going to treat it as if you actually qualified the information, regardless whether you did so or not. So my recommendation is if you make a phone call and you're not able to actually complete that phone call like you would have liked, for instance, you may get somebody on the phone and actually get them talking and they confirm the address, but then you ask them, hey, is Sam the decision maker for you guys? And they say, and then they don't, agree to give that information out, or they don't, they don't confirm that Sam is the decision maker. So technically what you need to put is one of these three options so you can make sure that this stays considered a new lead, because you're going to remind yourself by doing so that, hey, I need to call this person back to try to verify this information because I ultimately haven't verified it. So I can put one of these three options, and technically I would say in that scenario I just gave, I typically put a no answer because my question wasn't answered. And so I would put no answer. Again, I can put who I spoke to if I would like in the notes, and I'm just going to hit save. All right. And so one last example I'll show, and you notice it shows that it's still a new lead. Just going to click on another business here, making a phone call to Winfield Laboratories. And let's say I make a phone call, I want to put the activity down. All right, I'm going to add an activity. I made a phone call, and let's say I spoke to a non-decision maker. However, the number of employees, let's say 20, was actually incorrect. They actually have 25 at that location. And so I can put who I spoke with if I'd like, I could put any notes. Well, I'm going to save this activity, but before I go back, I want to scroll down, and you notice on my vitals here, I need to edit my vitals. So I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to then go edit the field that I need to update. So instead of 20 employees, I'm going to put 25. I can change it in both spots, and I save that vital information. If I scroll back up, the status is qualified, obviously, because I spoke to a non-decision maker, and I go back to my leads, and that lead is no longer there. And so lastly, it is possible you're making a qualifying call and you're going to reach out to Linux Mexico Minority Holdings, and you make a phone call, and let's say the decision maker is the one who answers the phone. Well, you can put you spoke to a decision maker, and you may have qualified the information, but let's say possibly that you spoke to the decision maker and you kind of told them what we do, and you were able to set an appointment with that decision maker. Well, you can actually now put, I spoke to a DM. All right, I confirmed all the information I need to. I can put who I spoke to. The decision maker's name might be Dave. All right. Well, in this scenario, if I spoke to a decision maker, that I would probably want to add a next activity. My next activity that I want to add, something that needs to go in the calendar, is that appointment or that meeting that I just scheduled with Dave. And so then I can put the information about, what appointment I set. And so, let's say I set that appointment for the 27th at, 10 a.m. And so we got to maneuver some things around there. All right. And it's going to be a DM1, and it's going to be with Dave. And now I hit save, and now the status of this is changed to a decision maker 1. And so if I go back to my leads, it's going to no longer be there. But if I filter my leads to actually show me the appointments that I have that are DM1s, and I apply that filter, there is the Linux Mexico company that we just worked with. And also if I go to my daily plan on the 27th, there is the appointment that I scheduled. So you can see it's very simple to do this on the web-based version. It really just takes, it's very user-friendly. So I encourage you to get onto the training environment and kind of play around with this yourself. But in my personal opinion, I actually like seeing the information on the screen as I'm calling. I do like that. But I would make sure that if you're watching this video, to make sure that you also watch the similar video where I show you how to do the exact same thing that I just showed on this one, on the mobile device, because there's a few more capabilities on the mobile device that allows you to kind of filter some things a little bit better, and there's a little bit more options. So make sure you tune in for that. Thanks for joining me.